these pieces here are all done in the same period within about a year of each other. And this one particularly was sort of influenced by when I did 1 year at the Victoria College of Art when it first opened up. And that was when Jack Wise and Fleming Jorgensen and Bill Porteous, I think, were teaching there. And Jack Wise sort of really hit home with what he was doing, his dancing of the brush and that sort of thing. That's always stuck with me. The other person, Jack Wise, and this over here, the NRA light, I've also was sort of impressed and influenced by Pollock, Jackson Pollock. So sort of a combination using Jack Wise's dancing, sort of that controlled dance of the brush, and Jackson Pollock sort of just the energy of letting paint fly and see what happened, and then sort of letting chance take its course, and then stepping back and looking and saying, I see something in there, and I start sort of like the Inuit, they take everything away from a piece of sculpting, where I start putting pieces back together, sort of the opposite sort of thing. All my materials, the materials I use is screen printing ink. I have a friend and I have a screen printing shop up island. So I discovered that this particular ink is for decals. It's a gloss vinyl ink, and you can put it on really thick or really thin, like transparent, and its viscosity, the thinness of it, you can either have it really thick so it doesn't run, or it's almost like transparent like watercolor. So it's a wonderful medium. I've never heard anyone else using this particular ink for painting on. On canvas it works brilliantly, but what I usually use is big cardstock, which is about 4 feet by 3 feet, and it absorbs, and they become electric actually with the color on, because it's got a gloss background and it just jumps off. It's amazing, sort of how it plays on the surface that I play on, sort of thing.
How long have you been painting?
I started probably when I was about 5 years old. I discovered color, and I've just sort of been doing it on my own. I did that 1 year at Victoria College of Art, and apart from that, I didn't really like people telling me what to do. Actually, the person who told me I learned the most after Jack Wise was Fleming Jorgensen, because every time I did a painting, he says, "That's not painting, that's not painting." And finally, I just said, "Blankety blank you, Fleming," and I started throwing paint around, and he came around, "That's how you paint." So that was so cool if someone keep telling me, "No, you can't, that's not how you paint, that's not," because I was very tight and trying to do really tight lines, and then I discovered just throwing it and dancing, and that was a real insight, sort of inspiration, sort of breakthrough for me at that particular point. And that was probably the last time I ever had instruction. I've just been learning on my own, and I moved to Calgary for 10 years and stumbled into an amazing group of artists and musicians and filmmakers, and so had sort of really learned in the trenches with real sort of artists, practicing artists, that sort of stuff. And this is the second time that I've tried to actually go public, actually put stuff up, because I've tried 1 or 2 shows, and most people go, "It's a little too intense, too edgy," sort of stuff. But Ian was brilliant, sort of said, "Got some empty walls here, why don't you put some of your stuff up?" So it's pretty cool to see these up here, gotta say. It's kind of a neat feeling.
So the show is going to be here for how long?
I've never discussed that with Ian. I think it's a month or so, something like that, yeah. And have you got any questions yourself, or?
See different styles, kind of.
Okay.
Can you talk about a little bit, like, for example, those two here behind you are quite different styles. So.
Yes. I think sometimes, like the Boy Sitting and NRA Light, the aesthetic's the same, the color is the same, but for some reason, the mood I'm in or the way I feel like dancing that particular day on the canvas, they're different. Generally, when I'm painting, I have 3 or 4 of these up on a wall, and I start one, and then one inspires the other. And sometimes, I don't know why this one was just so basic and strong line, just the little man. I have been influenced by a pile of different artists. From one guy I love is Francis Bacon, the British artist. It just blows my mind. And as I said, Jackson Pollock. Rothko, I love Rothko, his big black pieces, the minimalism of that sort of thing. And like this one, I think is very minimalist. the boy, where this one is very, there's a combination of minimalism in there, but it's an active minimalism. And something like this, I sometimes think of going into our own bodies and cells, where it's sort of like the internal universe sort of thing. It's very simple, but it's super complex sort of thing. I don't know if that makes any sense, but.
So some of the paintings here are kind of hunting. So
Or what, sorry?
hunting, like the faces are like they are suffering or something like that. So that's your bacon kind of.
Yes.
Influence?
This one particularly is called Terra Nullis, and that's I'm not sure if it's a Latin word. When the Catholic Church went on their crusades around the world, when they went to Australia, North America, South America, when they landed, they said, there is no human life here. We have the right to everything. So the Aboriginals in Africa, they weren't considered human. The First Nations here weren't considered human. But the term was terra nullis, that there's no life here. We have the right to it. So yes, they have a lot of suffering looking back out. But through their suffering, their vision, they saw way beyond their own conquerors. And I think there's always hope in even though they're a little intense and sometimes sad, there's always, like right here, the pink coming through is sort of showing that there's life, there's color within a black hole, there's always light within that black hole. They're not for the light of heart or faint of heart, so to speak. I've always thought art's supposed to jostle you and make you think, as Francis Bacon did, Picasso, some of the greats, sort of, even back to Leonardo and those guys, there was something, it was beautiful, but sometimes it was uneasy, and there's something in the back of your head that just made you think, sort of thing. And it was not specific, a little ambiguous, so there was a lot of interpretation, sort of. The writing. I also love playing with the alphabet, the words, and I write a lot, verse and that sort of stuff. And this is my little homage to 9/11, but I kind of like putting a very ambiguous statement there, that it might have meaning and it may not have meaning. And it's just a nice combination of having a visual and a word. So there's two connotations there, and one sort of juxtaposes the other. This particular one, that was totally spontaneous. I had some green down there and I said, oh, that looks like a farmer's field. And just out of the blue, that flying over Chester's farm, the air was clean, it just sort of popped into my head. That's what I love about creativity, when you don't know why, but you plunk something on there, and I don't know why, just the balance, the words seem to work with the piece. It was brilliant, sort of thing. And this particular one was kind of a new technique I discovered. I put all my paint down, and it was actually sort of a normal, as normal as I can be, portrait of sort of a Michael Jackson. And then I thought, Michael Jackson and Dorian Gray, there's some similarities there. Michael was brilliant, tragic little character. And then, so I just took a knife and just started dancing around, ripping out. And that's sort of what, if Michael had looked in the mirror or in his closet, that's sort of, I think, what would have happened to him. And it did happen, unfortunately. A brilliant, talented guy that just got eaten up by the system, sort of thing. And that's about the size of that one. This is a collage piece. The actual 3 pieces of color were done on a decal stock, and then I ripped the piece all up into a bunch of different sections, and these 3 pieces spoke to me when I put them down. There's a beautiful rhythm sort of happening there. And I got the title, it just sort of jumped at me, that Hungry Ghosts, which is a Buddhist idea of when someone dies, if their spirit isn't taken home, it starts floating around looking for another host, and it floats around people who are desperate or sad or depressed, and they try to dive into their bodies and take control. So these were 3 hungry ghosts looking for 3 new hosts, is sort of what the idea was. And that was trying to use the concept of a Chinese chop, but just using a little pair of lips to